Scott Vicknair, injury attorneys, we fight for the win.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Overrule Podcast, brought to you by the Scott Vicknair Law Firm. I am David Vicknair, along with my co-host, Brad Scott. Good morning, Brad.
Good morning. How are you doing today, David?
I'm doing well. No complaints. We're getting ready to go on the July 4th holiday, but the humidity has definitely set in. We're in the hot weather, beach, vacation.
Storm heading into the Gulf.
Yeah, the storm Beryl is, and knock on wood, I don't have any wood around me, but allegedly Beryl is going to stay west because of this heat ridge, so hoping that it does not hit.
When is the last time a meteorologist got it right at this far out, though?
I do have a joke about meteorologists, but it's escaping me right now, so I can't say it, and I don't think it was appropriate to say on the air to begin with. But back to our main topic for the day is today we are talking about you, Brad, because
I should have saw this coming.
The last time that we shot, you sprung on me before the show that this was going to all be about David Vicknair, which made me very uncomfortable to talk about myself, and so I am relishing that I get to spend 30 or 40 minutes introducing you to our audience base, to our clients, our former clients, and everybody out there who wants to learn about you and your journey to becoming a co-owner of the law firm. I'm a managing partner of one of the biggest estate practices in Louisiana.
So you're saying this is going to be the least popular episode?
Yeah, you're going to be surprised. More people will be interested to hear what you have to say or not say. But truly, you have taught me so much from the standpoint of marketing, business mindset, and helped me throughout the last 9 years that we've been practicing together. Jeez. It has been that long, since June of 2015, and been such a key piece in my personal development and growth, both as a lawyer and an owner with you. And so I'm excited for everybody to get to know you a little bit. And I know some of these things about you, but I also want our guests to know. But tell our guests a little bit, Brad, about where you grew up, where you're from, your education, and what your journey was like before you started law school.
Well, that's kind of why we linked up, is we have a kind of a similar background. We're both born in the Bayou, in Lafourche Parish, essentially. That's where I was born and raised. Went to a little elementary school called Bayou Blue. In the middle of Lafourche Parish. We've talked about down the Bayou, not the Bayou. This is in the middle of the Bayou, basically. But
is that what you consider it?
I consider it the middle.
Oh, okay.
You North Lafourche people.
Well, it's technically Terrebonne, and the Lafourche Bayou people don't believe that the Bayou in Terrebonne is actually a bayou, so that's a whole different controversy.
Let's be honest with you. But I grew up kind of an interesting childhood. My grandfather or my great-grandparents had a lot of real estate, and they divided it up for their family and kind of gave one to each of the kids. And then my grandfather did the same thing for his kids. My mom was one of 6, I think, or 7. So I grew up in a neighborhood surrounded by my aunts, my uncles, my grandparents, my great-grandparents, all my cousins. So like everybody in the neighborhood I was related to. So I think I credit that to the fact that I couldn't get away with anything because it was like living with 10, 15 moms and dads always looking over what you're doing. So it kind of kept me on the straight and narrow path growing up and kind of kept me out of trouble. College, I didn't move away. I stayed at home. I was a commuter student going to Nichols, both of our alma maters. I got a degree in corporate finance there, which kind of put me on the business path, I think, back then. And from there, I finished undergrad and took a few years after that and ran a couple small businesses. And then one day got bored and decided, for some reason, which I can't remember, that law school was probably a good idea. And I remember my dad saying, why do you want to do that? Why do you want to be a damn lawyer? And I kind of agreed with him. But it was kind of one of those things that, it was either that or getting an MBA, and it sounded like a good idea at the time. And it's kind of how I ended up in law school for the most part, with no intention of being a lawyer. Now, 20 plus years later, here we are, and I'm still doing this stuff with a lot less hair.
Did you have any lawyers in your family growing up, Brad? Are you the first?
First lawyer. I think I may have had maybe even 1 or 2 people that even went to college before me. So, it was a big step in my family as far as being the first person to kind of go to a professional accreditation type of schooling or something like that. So I didn't really have any role models growing up that were lawyers, didn't know any lawyers. It was completely foreign to me what lawyers even did because we never had any use for them. I'm sure anybody has use for lawyers, but that's a different story. So, yes, it was a new endeavor, that no one was really there to kind of guide me through.
And you mentioned you did corporate finance at Nichols. Can you maybe explain a little bit about, do you think that particular major helped you in development to become a lawyer, hurt you? What's your perspective on that?
I think as becoming a lawyer, I don't know if it necessarily helped me become a lawyer. It teaches critical thinking skills, things of that nature. I think what the background did was made me a better lawyer to run a business, because the business side of running things and the actual practice are completely two different things. But having that economics background, accounting and finance, and knowing those types of things, I think that's translated well into what we do. Because as you and I have spoken before, we're more running a business than we are practicing law at this point.
For sure.
So I do draw back from those experiences and those things I learned at Nichols, and I had a great education at Nichols. It's a phenomenal business school that they have. They're called the Harvard on the Bayou, as you may know.
I do know.
And it set a good foundation for being a business person and running a business.
We are Harvard on the Bayou, and I believe, as a side note for our listeners, that the actual Harvard actually sent us a cease and desist letter at some point telling us that we could no longer print the Harvard on the Bayou T-shirts when I was in school there. So you used to sell the merch, but then Harvard got all mad about it.
So in the playback of this podcast, if that part's bleeped out, that's exactly why. We don't want to be infringing on any copyrights.
We'll talk about that some more. We have a guest coming up who's a law professor, a professor of law at Nichols, Eugene Go, and maybe we'll get into that.
This will be a very interesting episode.
It will be. So talk to me a little bit about your family and the role of your family into you becoming a lawyer and developing as a lawyer. How integral was that? How important is that to you this day?
Well, like I said, I grew up in a neighborhood just surrounded by family. So family was always very important. We saw our grandparents on a weekly basis. My grandfather had retired, and he had taken another career as a bus driver. So he was the one that picked us up in the morning and dropped us off in the afternoon. So we always were surrounded by family. And being like that, we always saw each generation taking care of the generation before. So we developed a really strong sense of helping people and being there to take care of people. And I think that translates into practicing law. I mean, we're here to solve problems and help people with problems. So I think that kind of that family setting really translates well to the things that we need to be able to do to be an effective lawyer, and really being there for people, because people don't call us with happy problems.
Yep.
We talk about that all the time. So usually when we're picking up the phone, somebody's having a really bad day, and just being able to empathize with them and try to guide them to a solution. I think that upbringing really helped that a lot.
You mentioned some side businesses, so as I know some of these stories, I'm going to try to goad some of them out of you, but did you have any interesting stories or funny anecdotes or learning lessons from some of those side businesses, maybe like day trading or active trading while you were in law school, you want to share with the listeners?
Learned lots of lessons. That's actually, well, that story is why I became a lawyer.
Well, we're going to hear that one then. Why don't you explain what happened with that story?
Like I said, I got a corporate finance degree. I'm looking to get a graduate degree, not planning on being a lawyer or ever practicing law. So first semester to 2 semesters in law school, I was kind of just there going through the motions, let's say. I was still day trading, had written my own trading software. I was doing very well with it, but that was kind of my focus, not law school. And there was a particular day, and I remembered very clearly. So
you were doing the what do they call them, the meme stocks and all? You were doing all that before?
That was way before that.
Before that was even a thing.
This is 25 years ago. But basically, it's when day trading first started. At that point in time, I mean, literally, you had people in taxi cabs that were day trading during the day while they're driving their taxi cabs. But I took some what's called leveraged positions. That's where you can kind of...
That's a diplomatic way of saying it. You're saying very risky.
Well, not that the underlying investment was risky, but you could control a lot more money with a little bit of money. So they'll allow you to bet $10 and you have $100 on the line, basically, the way of putting it. So I had a very highly leveraged position that was sitting overnight. I went to class that day, and all of a sudden, the Federal Reserve chairman at the time was Alan Greenspan. Some people may remember him. But he did something that was unprecedented. It had never happened before. So the Federal Reserve controls interest rates for the most part, or sets the Fed funds rate. And they have these bank meetings once every couple months or quarterly, and that's when they adjust interest rates. Well, he came out in the middle of it wasn't at a bank meeting, just in the middle of the day, and they adjusted interest rates, and the market just went nuts. Mm-hmm. And if you bet $1 and you get 10 back, well, it works the opposite direction also. So if you lose $1, it goes down $1, you lose $10. So the trading capital that I had at risk got pretty cleaned out in about 3 hours. And at that point in time, I realized maybe day trading's not for me. Maybe I need to go back to class and pay attention, and maybe have to make this law thing work. So if not for that, we may not be sitting here today.
And I think you You had some. I'm just laughing because I love that story. I've never forgotten that story because you told it to me when I was, I think, in law school, and it's a good story.
Yeah, we plan our lives and we have these master plans, but it's really the random things that have the biggest impact on our lives and make us end up where we're at.
What was law school like for you? Did you enjoy it?
It was one of those things. It's kind of, I went to LSU. I started back in 99. So it was 99 and those 3 years after that. It was a interesting thing for people who have not gone to law school. You go to high school, you go to college, then you go to graduate school, and it's kind of more of a filtering process. As you go up in your education, you're surrounded by more and more people who are higher achievers, type A personalities. So going to law school at LSU was kind of the first time I was in a room full of people who were very similar to me, type A personalities, overachievers who really try to do things. And it was the first time in my education where I really had to start actually studying and doing the work as opposed to just paying attention in class and drawing pictures in my notebook and I've always was a straight A student, but it was a little bit more of a challenge. It's one test at the end of the semester. I think in LSU at the time they try to make you fail the first year just to kind of humble you a little bit to get your ego out of the way, which actually worked pretty well for the most part. But it was a quick 3 years. It was a blur. But yeah, learned a lot at LSU. I love the professors I had there. I really credit them for the attorney I became because they really made me learn evidence. They made me learn procedure. And I think that's where a lot of people who go to law school, they may get away with not learning those things. And it really hampers them in their development as a lawyer later on. You have to have those fundamentals in place.
You had some really good relationships, right? Some friends that you made in law school, some of them like Blazin' Zena and Donnie O'Pry, who I've had the luxury of getting to know. Really, I'd say luxury getting to know Donnie, not you, Blaze. Just kidding. I love Blaze. But great lawyer. Both of them are two really good lawyers in Lafayette and good people, wonderful people that you made friends with in law school.
Stayed in contact to this day, and I still have long, life-lasting relationships with people we saw. We met in law school. So yeah, it's when you go through battles together and through wars, they say you develop a camaraderie with people, and that's what happens with law school, I think.
Right. All right. So after law school, take us from what happens from the standpoint of you finish law school and then you get out in the working to succession law extraordinaire Brad Scott today.
I wouldn't say that, but I went to work for a law firm where we both have a common basis at Favre, Demarest Rousseau, and Luckley at the time. And I was fortunate to work with Rhett Favre, who we've talked about before, was a mentor of mine, and I worked with Tom Luckley as well. So I had a good mix of doing commercial work, banking work, some personal injury law, and a little bit of everything. But the most important thing was Tom and Rhett both weren't not afraid to let me just try things and go after things and figure things out on my own. So, a lot of times people come out of law school and they go work for a firm and they don't really see any real action for the first 4 or 5 years.
Right.
I think I tried my first jury trial with Rhett like 6 or 7 months after I got out of law school. So
pretty fast. You
hit the ground running. So I think that accelerated the learning curve dramatically. Which put me a little further ahead than my contemporaries at the time. So, I got a lot of experience there working with them. Following Katrina, that was a big debacle as far as New Orleans and everything else. It was still working with them. And at some point, it's decided it was time to part ways and kind of open my own firm. It all started, the origins of what we have now started with me and one paralegal in one office, basically. Yep. And kind of grew it from there. But a lot of what I've always been business-minded and like the business aspect of it. So it's just, grew it slowly over time, kind of where we're at. As far as the succession part of the practice, Mr. Marshall Favre, who was Rhett's uncle, and Favre, Demarest Rousseau, luckily was it third generation at the time, I think?
I think so.
3 or 4 generations of Favres. He was kind of at the end of his career at that point in time. He was doing a little succession work, but he's the one that taught me successions. That's where I first started learning about it and started working on it, and it kind of gave rise to everything we have now. So I credit Mr. Marshall with a lot of that.
Now, did you just know, because you did get a wide range of legal experience, right? At Favre Demarest, you were doing banking for some of the big banking legal work for some of the biggest banks in the country. You were doing some corporate litigation and representation and general business stuff, some personal injury. Did you just know what you liked and didn't like? What did you like and not like?
At the time, I really liked doing the banking litigation and stuff like that. But I was always drawn to helping out families because of my upbringing and being around families. I really enjoyed the estate and the probate work type stuff. So it's something I kind of just naturally gravitated towards, I believe.
Yeah.
And kind of just, it ended up being my biggest practice area, over time. And I started realizing the more you specialize in an area and kind of hold yourself out at that, the more of that work you attract, essentially. Right. So, as they say, there's only two definite things in life: taxes and death. Yep. So, my practice focused on the death side of it, and it's been, very good for my development as a lawyer, just focusing on that area.
And so you went out. When did you go out on your own when you left Favre Demarest, Brian?
I'm really bad at chronologies. That would have been around maybe 15 or 16 or somewhere in there, I believe. I don't know. You probably remember better than I do.
Yeah, I definitely came and started practicing you in June of 2015. So it had to have been
since before that. Then.
Yeah.
Has it been that long?
Yeah.
Jeez.
Probably. 9 years for me this June, and then for you maybe 9.5 or
When did
10.
the Saints win the Super Bowl?
2009.
So it was like 3 years after that, I think.
That's 12.
Wow.
You were out 3 years before I came over there?
I think so.
Interesting. Okay.
If I remember the chronology correctly.
I don't know if it was that long, but we don't have time to argue on the air about it. So,
and without going back and finding a reference, I'm not going to know.
So looking at today, what our listeners may not understand is there's not a ton of lawyers in Louisiana. In fact, I don't think there's anybody in Louisiana who has a robust and a big specialized practice solely in estate, meaning successions, wills, estate planning type of work as you. So take us back from how you leave Favre Demarest with basically no clients to building what starts that emphasis to building one of the biggest estate practices in the state of Louisiana today?
It's not something I ever set out to do. Obviously, it's just we've grown over time by the phone just continuing to ring, doing good work for people, getting referrals. I think at one point we calculated, I think over 40% of our work now comes from people that know us already. But I think very simply, we just did really good work. It's something like I said, we've specialized in, and then we got to be known for that. Most of the people out there, like you said, that do practice succession law, it's usually not the size firm that we have. Right. A lot of times it's somebody who does it as part of an overall practice, but they do a little bit of domestic work, they do a little personal injury work, they do a little bit of everything. They kind of do that. There's a couple people that do successions and kind of stay with that, but we're the only ones of our size, I believe, that do this much work. We're handling anywhere, I think we're north of 400 estates per year right now. So,
which is huge.
Yeah, it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
But it's just grown over time. A lot of that I attribute to just, looking at the practice as more of a business as opposed to just a law firm, and just incrementally, they always say if you're not growing, you're dying.
Right.
But we're always looking for ways to grow the business, to reach more people, to, not only reach more new people, but to stay in contact, which we try to do with the existing clients that we have. And, we become part of their family after we work with them, and
Absolutely.
They refer more people to us. So I think over time, it's just grown naturally. It's nothing I set out to do. It's just because we're doing the little things that people keep coming back to us, keep referring people to us, and the net just gets bigger and bigger of the people who are working with us.
Yeah, and you and I always talk about, right, it's easy to get intoxicated by going and get that new client, but the referral clients are always the best, typically the best cases,
yes.
The ones that we want to have that relationship built with over time. So tell me what is your mindset on the service that y'all provide to our estate clients to really maximize their trust and their commitment to you and your team's work to feel comfortable referring, because a referral is the highest compliment
yes.
somebody can give us, right?
Well, one, you got to do good work. So you got to be knowledgeable of your subject matter. And, the attorneys who work with me, my practice group, they're very, very, very good at what they do. We're constantly researching these topics. We litigate them all. So we feel like we really know this area of the law. The other thing, too, is that, we put the clients first. I know you do the same thing and you're part of the practice, but I have these conversations with people all the time. My job is to find the quickest, most cost-effective way to do something.
Yep.
People, they call me cheap. I'd say it's frugal, but I don't like to see people waste their money. We just had a client, a couple of weeks ago. They called us for a succession situation. They paid us a retainer, and then we got into it. I said, there's an easy way they can do this without even needing us. So we're happy to give them their money back, and they go try this. If it doesn't work, come back to us. So just putting the clients first. We don't put the dollar first. We put the clients first, and we try to do what's right by the client. Yep. One of our core values on our side of the group is that we do the right thing even when no one's looking. Yep. That means with the clients, that means with the courts, it means with the opposing attorney. That's very important for us. Yep. And that's what drives a lot of what we do. And I think people see that. We come off as genuine because we are being genuine with people when we're dealing with them. And I think they see us as a trusted advisor, and they really know that we're not after their money, we're after helping them.
Yeah. The thing I love about that story you just told is not only is it like incredible service, right? Because it's hospitality more than what one of our clients would expect, that we would do the right thing and give them their money back and not try to charge them.
We could have done a succession for him, but he didn't need it.
100%.
Yeah.
But then what else? I mean, how committed do you feel? I'm sure you have similar feelings as me, is like you're diminishing the profession if their experience with a lawyer, because I mean, what percentage of your clients are first time lawyer client, like first time they've had to hire a lawyer?
High percentage. And like everyone else, they have an image of what lawyers are, whether it's from commercials or from TV shows and stuff like that. But
not our commercials.
Our commercials are pretty good.
There we go. All right.
But a lot of people have this image of lawyers as being greedy people who are always cutting corners and stuff like that. So I hope after working with us, they have a different view of lawyers, or at least hold the lawyers they're going to work with in the future to a higher standard, because it really should be that way. And
absolutely.
As you and I know, the bottom 10% give a bad name for everybody else. So there's lots of really good people that do what we do in our profession, but you don't hear the stories about people doing good things. You always hear the stories about people doing bad things.
Right.
One of my pet peeves, anytime you see a TV show, a news story or something where a lawyer has done something, it could be somebody got involved with a drinking and driving accident, but the headline's not man gets an accident, it's lawyer gets an accident.
Right.
They always highlight that he's a lawyer, or that person is a lawyer. So we get a bad rap, whether it's justified or not. And I'd like to think we were trying our best to change that perception when people work with us.
That I like to too. I think some of it's probably earned, right? The bad rap.
There's some bad seeds out there.
I had somebody tell me the other day, which is a good thing. I don't know if we talked about this. It's like sometimes we forget. It always says attorney and counselor at law. We leave out the counselor. Like sometimes it's okay to give somebody like what you did, give them guidance, but not charge them anything. Give them their money back. Like help people when they need advice.
Majority of my week is giving away free advice. Because I still do the majority of the client lead consultations when people first contact the office, because I want to talk to them and see what's going on, see if I can diagnose their problem, see if there's something we can help them with. But people at the end of those conversations all the time, a lot of times I'm recommending you don't need this or you don't need that, and they're like, well, how do we compensate you? Like, there is no charge for that. If you needed me, I'll charge you, but you don't.
As it relates to your every day-to-day practice now, what is your favorite thing to do at work? Like, what gets you out of bed in the morning that you're excited about in the practice?
Well, the practice or the business. The business side of it, I really enjoy the marketing of it. Yep. Sandra's with us today. She's on the other side of the camera. She's my marketing person. If I could just have her job and do her job all day long, I would like it. But she has it right now, and she does a great job with it.
She does.
But I like the challenge of how to cut through all the noise out there and try to get our message to people so they can find us. I enjoy that a lot. And you and I go to conferences and things like that. But the creating of the business, creating the systems, I'm one of those people. I love to see mistakes, because a mistake means, hey, we can fix something, make something better, make the machine go faster. And the more mistakes we make and the quicker we make them, the better we get, and the quicker we get at it. So I like working on the machine. I'm a tinkerer by nature. Mm-hmm. I like doing woodworking and stuff like that. So I like the building part.
Mm-hmm. Do you have one or two? You have one case that really just sticks out in your mind that is a case that really shaped your knowledge of law or practice? Or
I have one case that, I always tell the story to other clients, and it's more of a cautionary tale. A lot of the advice we give is through telling lessons that we've learned from other cases. But there was a particular case when I was a very young lawyer, when I used to work with Mr. Favre, Mr. Marshall Favre. There was this family, a New Orleans family, like I'm mentioning names, obviously, and they had fought over everything for years before I got involved in the case as a young lawyer. And there was businesses, real estate, they dealt with all those things. For the last year of the litigation, this is a brother and sister fighting with each other. They're literally fighting over the stuff in mom's house, the china, the furniture. This is not really nice stuff, but they will fight over it. They probably each spend another $100,000 on attorney's fees. And the part of the story I always tell people was, at the end of the day, one of the siblings was awarded the china that mom had. The other sibling had it out of state. And that sibling had to ship it over to the person that we represented. So he gets a box of stuff from his sister. He goes to open the box, and all the china is supposed to be in there. He opens it out. Every single piece of china is individually wrapped in bubble wrap in pristine condition. He then takes it upon himself to tell his wife to get the video camera. He walks into the backyard on the patio, has her follow him out the video camera, then takes each piece of china and individually drops them and shatters them on the ground just so he can send the video to his sister to say, I won. And that kind of frames that, I don't want to be representing people like that if that's all they're after, but the things that people will do to each other when it comes to probate and estate work, because unlike other litigation, like I said, you mentioned I did banking and all that stuff. A lot of times, you don't really know the other side all that well. You may have had one business deal with them. When we're fighting with people in litigation and estate matters, these are the people they grew up with. These are the people they sat across the table from at Christmas dinner. They know each other. So it gets a lot more heated in those situations. Sometimes it's not about the stuff. It's just about winning. And I don't like to be part of that sometimes.
It makes me think of that. There's a Seinfeld episode that's a corollary when Kramer takes a girl bike from Elaine. And Newman ends up having to be the one who brokers the dispute about who should be entitled to this young girl's bike. And Kramer's riding this little girl bike around New York City in the episode. And Newman edicts that they're going to split the bike in half. And Elaine says, sure, fine. But Kramer objects and says, just give it to Elaine because I don't want it to be ruined. I want somebody to have the bike. And so Newman says, aha, you are the true owner. So I feel like the sister should have got the dishes because she was the one who wanted them. At the end of the day,
she wanted them. But it's amazing. I mean, we see all the time, people are very close-knit families while the mother, the father, the grandparents are alive. But, once that older generation goes away, the gloves come off. I mean, the stories that I would hear sometimes I used to be shocked by, I'm not shocked by anymore because I've heard them 100 times. We repeatedly get cases where people say, grandma passed away. We have a cousin we haven't seen in 20 years, didn't come to the funeral. We were all at the funeral, got home to go to grandma's house to have a celebration of her life. And there's nothing left in the house. And we find out that he showed up after 20 years with a U-Haul and emptied the house out. And it's like, people will do those things.
When you see amazing. A lot of it now, the volume that you have of all the estate cases, you're going to see more and more of it.
And we see the same things repeated over and over. So, and we always tell people, that's the value of good estate planning is to prevent those types of fights and problems that you're going to have with the family. And I always remind people, bad estate planning is worse than no estate planning. So if you're going to do it, make sure you get it done right.
So tell us a little bit about your hobbies, Brad. I know for starters, that your daughters, all three of them, are very important pieces and parts of your lives along with Liz. But tell us about your hobbies, what you like to do with your daughters. Let's talk about that.
Well, I really enjoy, like I mentioned, woodworking. That's one of my favorite things. My therapy is making sawdust.
Nice.
And all my daughters at various points, they've at least tried to get them hooked on sawdust. It hasn't worked out that well. Avery, the young one, she likes it now, but she uses up all the tape in the garage to tape the wood together. But it's something I take from my dad. My dad was a contractor and carpenter. My grandfather was as well. So I always grew up around those things and, creating things. So I really enjoy that. Right now I'm working on 2 nightstands for Liz. It's taken a little longer than she probably wanted them to take.
When did you start?
I think we're going on about a month and a half now.
No, that's not that long.
It's not that long.
I would have said 4.
I told her it was going to take 2 days. But I really enjoy woodworking. That's one of the things that I take a lot of pleasure in.
Did she draw the specs on the nightstand?
She gave me a printout. Well, she gave me the paper, the printout from where was it, Restoration Hardware, someplace that she wanted them. And of course, when I saw the price tag on it,
it's like I'll just make them.
I can build those. So I don't think she's going to be commissioning any more furniture through me, but at least it was worth a shot.
When you said Restoration Hardware, a chill went down my spine.
Yes.
Just as repulsing how expensive it probably was. Sorry to the ownership of Restoration
I've recreated it as best I can. So we're getting close. The only thing we had to do now is decide on a stain color, which is a little difficult for my wife.
Well, tell us a little bit about your goals for the future of the practice and what you're looking forward to.
Well, one of the recent developments, which I may have shared with you, my oldest daughter, Beck, after many years of trying to figure out what she wants to do, she's an undergrad right now. She's actually leaning into maybe going to law school. So I was like, well, that's great. Now I have to stick around a little longer waiting for you to go to law school and mentor you. But no, that's kind of what I'm looking forward to. I think, continually growing the practice and reaching more people and helping them through these estate messes that they find themselves into. We also like putting a lot of content out just to educate people and help them with things, but just continuing to help people and maybe one day growing some hair back and not having to deal with all the messes that we deal with.
What is the last book that you read that you really enjoyed? And then the second piece of the book question I have for you is, what is your favorite book?
Well, let's start with maybe my favorite book, probably the one that's had the most influence on my life and things that I've been able to accomplish. I'm a real big fan. I've talked about it before, even on our newsletters and in the podcast. It's the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
Stephen Covey.
It's one of the best books ever written about how to get things done, and one of the lessons there is putting first things first. Yep. And I'm a big advocate of telling people when I coach people and try to help people is you have to be proactive, not reactive. And I think most people in the world are just reacting to everything around them. They don't really have any definitive plan, and they don't really, if it's important to you, you have to find a way to get it done. And that means planning for it. I'm a big advocate of a calendar. I think calendar is probably the biggest success tool you can possibly have. Most people only put their appointments in their calendar, but if you want to accomplish something, you got to schedule time for yourself to work on those things. Your calendar drives everything. So if you look at somebody's calendar, you can tell what their priorities are. But I think that particular habit of putting first things first, that was a mindset for me that I learned a long time ago by reading that book. And it really forced me, if I want to grow a practice, if I want to do this or want to accomplish that, I have to find time. And finding time means actually blocking out time, making an appointment with myself and protecting that time to work on those things. So if you want to improve a relationship or time with your kids, you have to block out your time.
Right.
So that was a really important book, I think, in my development and mindset. Another book that I really loved was The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss. I read that one a long time ago. And the big lesson from there, which was kind of an aha moment for me, was he talks about this concept of a deferred life. So most people go through life where we work, we show up every day, do the same thing with the promise that someday, we will retire. Someday we will take it easy. Someday we will sell everything we have now and move to the beach or whatever. But that someday is always 20, 30, 40 years away for a lot of people. And unfortunately, a lot of people never make it there.
Yeah.
Or you make it there and then your health is so poor that you can't enjoy at that point in time. And that's what Tim refers to that as the deferred life. We're deferring till later to actually enjoy life. So the big lesson and concept I got from that book a long time ago was you really have to enjoy the journey, and you have to set up your life to where you can actually do things now. Don't bank on that thing at the end of the day. Yep. And try to set your life up and your business and your career in such a way that you get to enjoy life now.
Yep. 2 great books. Any that you've read recently?
We read books constantly, but most of my books are, business-oriented books, self-help books. I did finally read The Power of Moments, which I know it's a big book that you you enjoy.
From a customer service.
That's probably one of the more recent books that I've read that I really got a lot out of and really enjoyed.
Wasn't it great?
It's a great book.
I told you to read it. What is in closing, one piece of advice you'd give to somebody who's listening to the show, Brad, about the importance of estate planning and really thinking about planning for purposes of, we all don't want to think about that. We're going to all be dead.
Nobody likes to contemplate their own mortality.
We're all going to die.
It's going to happen at some point. I would tell people it's one of those things that's easy to keep putting off. Yeah. And too often we see that where people put it off, where they think it's something I'll get to later. You don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. I really struggle with convincing younger people, younger parents with young kids that they need estate planning, because everybody thinks this is for old people with lots of money. No, that's not what we do. We're trying to create a very organized way in which things can be handled if something was to happen to you. Part of estate planning is also doing like power of attorneys and things like that. So if you become incapacitated, somebody can take care of things for you in that situation.
Right.
It's probably more important to do estate planning when you have kids, young kids, than when you're older. The common situation we see all the time is, something happens to the parents. these kids who are minor children inherit things. And when they turn 18, they're getting the keys to the castle.
Right.
And too often you see them wasting through assets, not wanting to go to college, not wanting to get a job because there was no structure put in place for these kids.
Right.
So I'm always a big advocate. Get your estate planning done. Get it done early, especially if you have small children, because you want to have some kind of structure for them if you're not there or things to be taken care of for them.
Yep.
So you're really kind of protecting them from themselves.
Gotcha. Well, this has been fascinating. I've enjoyed making you uncomfortable.
Thank you very much.
And it goes without saying, Brad obviously is one of my mentors and the main reason that I'm here today. And so thankful to you for everything you've done for me and the firm. You're just an incredible person, lawyer, and leader. And there's nobody in the state who knows more about estate and succession law without a question than you.
I don't know if I could say that, but
well,
thank you. You're being kind.
I know it. And like you said, there's a ton of lawyers who dabble in it. They mess with the succession here and there while they have a mixed practice. And I get it. You know, they're trying to build a practice and get clients. They don't want to let a case and a client walk out the door. But it is complicated, and it's not something that somebody can just pick up and know how to really do it properly.
It's like everything in life. You learn by doing. And the more you do something, the more you know about it.
Yep. Well, thank you, Brad, for allowing us to peel back the onion on you. It's been a great discussion and a great episode. And as always, thank you to all of our listeners who have followed us along on the Overruled podcast with Scott Vicknair. We're just chugging along. We have some great guests coming up this summer and the fall for all of you. And as always, thank you so much for listening, and we'll hear from you next time. This has been the Overruled podcast, brought to you by the Scott Vicknair Law Firm. See y'all next time.
Y'all take care.
Scott Vicknair, injury attorneys, we fight for the win.
Information is for illustrative purposes only and does not constitute tax, investment, or legal advice. Always consult with a qualified investment, legal, or tax professional before taking any action.